participation. It begins, I think, right here. That'll be a challenge to everybody. So get a card, get to know everybody in this room, those resources that are available.
You're seeing the deal I saw.
Is that, there you go. And it's true. They're correct. Yeah. And that's a big part of it. Again, especially uniquely in this room where there are a lot of people here who are also solutions providers at multiple levels. Hopefully everybody knows everybody here. All right, Ron, I think this is a good chance to go into, we kind of dished it up here. A lot of challenges facing economic development everywhere, right?
Yep.
And it starts with folks working together at the base of that pyramid and with a plan. And so I'm going to turn over to Dr. Ron Swagger to talk about planning on a practical level.
Ooh, we got to do that.
Okay, that's academic.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. I think Mark asked this earlier. Let me see another show of hands. How many of you have participated in a strategic planning process of some kind? So I'm preaching to the choir here, pretty much, right? You've been through. How many of those plans, and some of you I know has been multiple probably, have you participated in one that you thought really kind of worked with? Okay. And now this is just a kind of a general statement, doesn't apply necessarily to one that you were in that either did or didn't work well. But what makes the difference usually between a plan working well and not working well?
Well-attended meetings.
Public participation.
Okay.
Implementation and follow-up.
I like that.
Definitely. Commitment from the top.
Okay. Okay, all of those things are important. We're going to try to talk about all of them. And so since you've all been through a lot of this, I know a lot of this may be repetitive, but let's use it as a kind of a reminder of some things along the way and then as a framework for any discussion that we want to go through. And I told you I would introduce myself a little further, and I'll kind of do that along the way, but just so you know my background, actually I came out of all of my degrees are in the area of economic geography. That's my actual training. And it gave me and Mark the same way. It gave us a perspective on economic development that I think is a little unique and very useful, because ultimately everything happens at a place. And that's what geography is all about. It's a place. And an understanding of the geography of the place is pretty important. And that's an important piece of strategic planning, as well as all of economic development. So that's where I got my training, and I've jumped around in a number of different institutions of higher education. I started my academic career at East Carolina University. Went from there, worked for just one short year with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg, North Carolina Planning Commission. That was all the planning I could stand was 1 year. Planning position. Went from there to what was then United Virginia Bank. It's now part of SunTrust. And I was their branch location officer. I love that job. I learned a lot about how this stuff works on the ground by working with that bank for the 4 years that I was there, locating their branch banks all over the state and deploying their ATM system back in the day. Went from there back into academia at the University of Southern Mississippi, where I taught a master's program in economic development. That was a master's program in the Department of Geography that had an undergraduate planning program. So it was a great mix. And we did some important teaching and education there, but we also got to do a lot of practical on the ground work where we could really go out and help communities, students and faculty. And that's kind of where I really cut my teeth, I think, in terms of community technical assistance and that type of thing. And about 13 years ago, I moved from Mississippi to Little Rock, Arkansas, where I worked at the Institute for Economic Advancement there, at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. That's a mouthful. That institute was primarily professional level training and a lot of technical assistance, community development, economic development work there. So that's kind of my background. Along the way, so I got my degrees in geography. I had the equivalent of a degree in economics. So there's a little bit of an economist in me. And now I'm doing consulting work. I retired from the university and I get to go out and do it the way when and where I want to. And so that's kind of been my career path. I said all that just to kind of give you a perspective. Along the way, I've seen a lot of strategic planning work. I've participated in a number of them, helped facilitate a number of them, and all the other technical assistance work we've done along the years. I see how it all fits together, and that's what I want to kind of bring to bear in our conversation here about strategic planning. So, does your community or region have a SEDS? How many of you know what a SEDS is? What is it?
Maybe economic development.
Okay. Who is responsible for developing the SEDS?
Regional planning.
Okay, the multi-county regional planning development type district, right? For either that SEDS or any other strategic plan you've been involved with, what was one of the goals, if you can recall any, that you came up with in your strategic plan? Anybody remember a goal?
Foster and encourage economic development.
Okay, I like that. Foster and encourage economic development. And what was that, in what area?
Those are for those east of your regional planning.
Okay, the planning
Planning
commission.
commission, right.
How about ecotourism was one of our 3 major goals.
Okay, focus on ecotourism.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk a little bit, and I know there's different definitions about what we mean by a goal and how that fits into the process. But I'm pleased that you all most of you are kind of familiar with this. So strategic planning, as you know, is designed to be a sort of a living vehicle. It is actually, I don't like necessarily the term vehicle so much because it's a process. And a vehicle implies it's a thing, okay? But the idea that it's living, it's an ongoing document, okay, is an important part of it. And what it does is it helps us to think strategy-wise, to make decisions, focus efforts, okay? And, you know, it kind of helps us kind of get our act together, in other words. Typically, a community strategic plan engages a broad spectrum of people. It inspires them to work together. It takes all those individual efforts, combines them into a best total benefit for everybody. And I think Mark touched on this, and you were talking about it a little bit earlier. Typically, a successful strategic plan requires one or more champions. Do you find that true in the work that you've done, that usually at the community level in particular, a champion is needed to help set up the plan, to get it going, devise it, and then implement it? Isn't it useful to have a champion or two? Okay, and we'll show some examples of that. This is an essential management tool. Helps us visualize the outcome. In the Bible, it says, people perish for lack of what? Knowledge. And without a vision, the people perish. So we need to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of vision going into it. If we don't have a vision, something that we can look for, we don't know where we're going. We're just kind of all over the place, and we're not restrained in a sense. We're not moving in a concerted direction. So, strategic planning helps us to visualize what is the outcome that we want to achieve down the road. Defines the direction for us and others. It gives, and importantly, gives it, how many of you have unlimited resources to do anything you want in your community for economic development? Well, hands up all over the room. Okay, so we've got scarce resources, financial, human resources to get the job done. We've got to figure out some way to properly channel those for greatest effectiveness. Strategic planning helps us do that. And it helps us to motivate and mobilize the community. And most of you know this saying, if you fail to plan, you may as well plan to fail. What should be in the plan? What are the pieces of the strategic plan? Just randomly, just name off some pieces.
Knowledge and vision.
Vision.
Outcomes.
Okay, you want to know what outcomes are going to happen? What else? If you saw the document itself that represents the planning process, what would it consist of? What else?
The goals.
Goals. Set of priority goals.
Measurements, how you're going to measure if you're successful or not.
Okay.
benchmarks.
What else?
Existing conditions.
Okay, which is, sometimes there's an acronym that's used to figure out existing conditions, what you're all about. Leading into direction.
SWOT.
Yeah, so we have visions, goals, objectives, we have analysis, SWOT analysis, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That would be part of an effective strategic planning process. Understanding market segments and target industries for an economic development plan. Strategies and tactics, and then performance benchmarks, the measurement part. Those would be some of the major pieces of a community strategic economic development plan. And we are focusing on economic development, okay? And then there would be the important implementation plan. And I put that separate because some people even argue that can be physically a separate document from the rest. I don't like that. It's not a plan if it's not implemented. It's a dust gatherer. Right? And that's the difference to me between the real system. You could have a really neat plan, but if that last part isn't on there, all it is a nice dust collector. Okay? So success has to be ultimately down to the implementation stage, or none of the rest of this really matters anymore. It doesn't matter how good it is. So, we start off with a lot of organizing and pre-planning. You don't ever get into a strategic planning process and just start planning right on day one. There's a lot of organizational effort that has to go into it to begin with in order for it to be successful. You've got to identify and recruit the right players, the stakeholders, create the structure through which you're going to actually do the planning process and then conduct the implementation of the plan. Figure out what resources do we have to work with to make this plan a reality. Then we get into vision, and we're going to talk about each of these. Assessing the community, identifying issues and formulating goals, objectives, and strategies, and then laying them out into implementation plans, and then doing the plan, implementation plan. So in all of that is the organizational part, typically starts with some kind of leadership team. Right? Anybody know what that, do you have a different term you might use for this leadership team? It's kind of the core group, could be a half dozen or 10 or 12 people that are going to guide the overall planning process.
Planning committee.
Planning committee. We used to call them the steering committee to help steer the process. It's the leadership team. And they have a very important function and responsibility. They're going to help guide the process. They're going to organize and structure the process, identify the resources, and help manage those resources to conduct the process I'm talking about. And then bridge the gap between people and resources, and then oversee the ongoing implementation stage. Okay, so there is a critical core group of people, and typically that one or two or three champions in your community are probably going to be part of that. They're going to be the spark plugs, I think Mark used the term earlier, that are going to spark plug this process, and they'll probably be on this so-called steering committee. So that's a critical step, is that you make sure and that's got to be a group of people who have long-term staying power. Because how long did your strategic plans take to develop the plans?
8 to 10 months.
Okay, why does it take so long? 8 to 10 months just to develop the plan, not much less implement it. Why? Because you want to get everybody involved, and it takes a while to get everybody together, much less get them talking and develop the plan. So it takes a while. And then the implementation part takes even longer, and you got to have this group of people being able to see the whole process through. That's another part of success. And I've seen several examples, I've been involved in several examples where the people got burned out developing the plan, and they weren't around to help with implementation, and it kind of fell through. For you local leaders, you have a particular role to play that kind of goes beyond that, or some specific things. it's really important that local leadership defends the need for the planning process. You know, there's still parts of the DRA region, our area here, where some people look at planning as communism, right? And, you know, comprehensive planning and zoning and so forth, and which it isn't. But it is looking for the general good of people. Well, you have to overcome some of those attitudes about planning, and you can be very helpful as local leaders to sort of assuage those misgivings. It's important that you help fund or implement the process. And by that, I don't mean you have to provide all the money, but you may know the people and be able to influence the people that can help provide the money. Not only just to conduct the planning process itself, but then obviously the implementations. And then be a leader in the process itself. Get your own input in there. You're a leader in the community. Your input is probably more insightful than a lot of others because you see it all as a community leader. That input is vital in the process. Attend the meetings, sponsor any public hearings and so forth. There's a lot of things you can do as a local official. And I know you all have your day jobs too that don't necessarily have anything to do with this, mayors in particular. Okay, but there are some things you can do that doesn't require a lot of your time and effort, but are very critical. Comments on that? Yeah.
We just did SET in our region, the Strengthening Economies Together, the USDA, to put together a strategic plan. And we were provided with great resources, great information, and it was like pulling teeth to get the people from the 4 counties. I mean, one of our counties, the economic developer came to the first one and we never saw him again. The economic developer. I mean, it was so frustrating. And the people you did see there were the same people that you see at everything. You know, you got like 10 people in your region that you can count on to be there, and that was it. It was so frustrating.
I wish I could tell you that only happened in your area. But that happens a lot, especially when you're trying to do multi-county initiatives where people have to kind of get over political boundaries, jurisdictions. You know, you got the cities and the rural areas all combined together and
Our
stuff.
commissioners were great. They were all there. They were, you know, one of them had some health issues, but he sent, you know, his subordinate
That's
or
good.
whatever. But on some of the other levels, you just didn't see them. They were there at the first one.
Yeah.
We had a huge crowd, and then it just kept getting difficult. You know, we were begging and emailing people to just show up.
And some of that,
What was the time frame that you did that over? How many months?
It's a year-long process.
See, I wonder if shortening it, would that, do
We
you
had
think that
cookies and snacks.
would help?
Well, with the curriculum, you really can't.
You can't.
There's no way to condense.
I see.
I mean, you can, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I really I don't have a vital role in economic development. I mean, it's a very small piece. But what I took away from there, I mean, I was blown away by the resources that they were able to provide for us. And I
Yeah.
learned so much. I'm thinking, why? You know, if for nothing else, why wouldn't you come and just be able to learn so much more about your community and, you know, drill down a bit and see, because when you're provided with that, you really can see a vision, like what's possible. Focus on what your strengths are. Even just identifying your strengths, you would be amazed at what you don't know about your own community until you sit down and do some of those things.
yeah.
It was an amazing process.
And I'd have to, you know, drill down into the forensics of your particular situation. I know that those things happen all over the place, but it's different reasons, different, you know, what could we have done differently to make that process what everybody else does. Sometimes it's, you know, they just don't see it as part of their responsibility. They have all these other things on their desk to take care of, and they
It
just...
wasn't a priority for
Right.
individual. It was an individual issue. It was the individual people did not see it as a priority, and they should have, being in the positions that they were in.
Well, and this is a role that the key leaders, you know, to try to keep those people together. Sometimes leadership in a community, in each of the counties in this case, you know, can kind of get it into their value system to make sure they're there if they're willing, if if those leaders are willing to do that.
I think it also goes to sometimes, we've all go through the planning process, like you said, implementation is so important.
Yeah.
And some of them probably thought, well, this is just another planning process. We've already gone through this,
Yeah.
there's no point doing this again. It doesn't happen. I think that's a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. So that's an issue that we have to deal with, and there's, you know, can't anticipate all of that. We have to try in the process of developing the planning process. That leadership team, they've got to anticipate as much of that, streamline it, make it as easy as possible. Not that the work is easy for everybody to participate, because you want it to. And that gets to this: consensus from everybody matters. People talk about a 360-degree view for community strategic planning. Consensus matters. And 360 view means you want to include everybody in the process. Mark mentioned the term I always like to use it. You've probably heard it. They're either in on it, they're up on it, or chances are they're out of it, in which case they're going to be down on it. So pick which preposition you want, okay? But and you want to, they're either in on it, you want them in on it as much as they can be, but at least if they're informed, then they're up on it. If they're not one of those two, then it's very likely they're going to try to throw monkey wrenches in it and sabotage the process. So we want to have as much consensus in community economic development strategic planning as possible. Kind of horizontal consensus building towards strategic planning. Their view is much more vertical, and all the visions and the mission and the goals and even the objectives are set by corporate management and the board of directors. And it descends down on the middle managers and the staff to get the job done. There's planning, there's a strategy process going on there, but it's much more vertical. Okay, and that we may have part of that go on in some of the parts of strategic planning that relate to developing a marketing plan for the Economic Development Agency, for example. That's more of an internal planning process. So there's a difference I've come to realize. But at this level, we want everybody involved in the process. The other, it's more on the implementation. How do we get it done? That's where some of that other kind of planning comes in. So, essential step, as you all know, in all of this is we got to gather a lot of information. We got to find out who we are. What are we all about? Okay, tomorrow, I guess, I'm going to talk about economic development marketing. And I'm going to emphasize that economic development practice is a specialized form of marketing. Well, how can we market ourselves if we don't know who we are? Okay? And so we got to use data, we got to use metrics to figure out who we are. Otherwise, and well, a lot of information, qualitative and quantitative. Okay? Whatever we can measure is good because it helps us to really define better who we are and overcome any perceptions that we're not who we think we are. Every community that I've done a strategic plan in, I think, pretty much, they all say they have the best school system. And all but one of them lied. And maybe that one didn't even tell the truth. I just haven't been in enough other places. Okay, so everybody's got, oh, a wonderful place to live, wonderful school system. Well, is that true? We really have to take a stark, hard look at what we're all about to find out what we got that's good, what we got that's okay, and what we got that's not so good. And so metrics, as much as we can measure, the more that we can do, the better. So, memorize these websites. I'm going to test you on them here in a couple minutes. You got it? Okay. But I'm going to touch on some metrics, some of the common ones that you probably used in some of your work. So gather as much unemployment, all these types of imports and exports, number of businesses, all this, population levels, labor force numbers, and so forth. And again, that slide, I hope, is on your jump drive. Include qualitative and quantitative information. I like this term, dashboard. One of my, I guess it came out of being a university instructor so long, the kids would hand in term papers and all this, and they put these silly buzzwords in there. It's like they went to the thesaurus to figure out 5 synonyms for the same thing, and wrote them all down. So I kind of developed a little bit of a simple line. That term dashboard kills me. lot of people are using that, and it's okay, I get it, but economic dashboard indicators, that's redundant to me. It's economic indicators, okay? Maybe they're in a dashboard-looking kind of document or something, but anyway, that's my hobby horse, and that was free. That little aside there cost you nothing. Understanding what are the trends in the economy and explaining them. Strengths and weaknesses. Here's the SWOT analysis we'll deal with in more detail, but we've got to know what are our assets. Recognize comparative advantages, comparative disadvantages, and as my old instructor used to say in college, least comparative disadvantages. Okay? And for some of that, we use measures like location quotients and import and export data. We'll talk about the location quotients. So we can go, we can get information about labor information, economic indicators, industry studies. This is a good source here in Missouri. Huh? Missouri. How many? Show of hands. Missouri. Oh, okay.
I'm old school.
All right. Here's typical information we like to look at. This is all kinds of information about labor. What do we mean by labor force participation? What does that, how is that number? That's a percentage number. Total percent of population in the labor force. Labor participation.
Of workable people.
Got it? What's happening here in Missouri?
Less people are working.
A lower and lower percentage of the people are participating in the labor force.
Maybe aging population.
Why? We'll just do a little
Aging
interpretation
population.
of this. Huh?
Aging population.
Population is aging, they're like me, they retired, I dropped out of the labor force. Okay, what else?
Young people aren't staying, they're migrating out.
Okay, so there was two things there. First of all,
People that want to work, but don't working.
okay, those who are actively seeking work and can't find a job. So there's Missouri, there's the United, in red, in the United States, overall in blue. It looks to me like you're a little, is that right? You're a little bit better off than the U.S. average. Then it's important to understand, both quantitatively and qualitative, where your community fits in to a broader regional structure, like the 4-county planning group. Okay, because you have, here's my geographer coming up. You got your community, and we have a close identity with our community. We love our community. It's the best community, right? We know that, and that's what the people next door say too. Okay, but then at sort of a different scale, some things operate outside the level of the community. People travel to work. They don't care about political boundaries. They don't care about county lines or city lines. Right? They'll cross over and go 3 counties away somewhere. Okay, so we got to know, where do we fit and what things work at what level, what geographic scale. So here we are in the West Plains region. Is that the Planning and Development District region?
No, it's actually 4 extra counties to the east. That's 2 separate planning districts.
That's 2 planning districts?
Yes.
Is Poplar Bluff one of the?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and is this the part that we were talking earlier, that this is really part of Arkansas?
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah.
Which is also not included in the data on Merck. Merck stops at the state line.
Yes,
So not a true representation.
that's true, that's true. So, some of what we're all about, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time on this later, is you've heard the term targeted industry strategies, and as part of the strategic plan, we want to try to figure out what businesses are the best prospects and the best fit based on our community assets, based on what we got that's good, and that matches up. So that's why I say we've got to do the kind of analytical work necessary to figure out what we got that's good. And it sounds like, Janie, you said all the data and all of the information that was provided really gave a lot of good information about your community. Yeah, okay. Here's some information, Missouri location quotients. I love that term, location quotients. Now here's the economist in me. Anybody know what is an economist? What's the definition of an economist?
Somebody who guesses a lot. An educated guess, though.
You see why I run from my hat as an economist a lot? Harry Truman said he was going to hire a bunch of one-armed economists so they wouldn't keep saying on the other hand.
That's good.
So the economists, they like to measure these things, and what we're doing is we're kind of measuring where we are and what's the process and so forth, but they just have to put in these big fancy words, so we won't really question what they're doing. That's the definition of economist, is trying to make you think you can't figure out what they're doing. Location quotients. On this list, look at this. Now here are selected business groups in Missouri. Here's their employment levels. What's the most important group here in terms of employment?
Hospitals.
Hospitals. And we got a really pretty good number here in management of companies and enterprises, whatever that means. Okay? But if you look at it another way, you find out that some other smaller sectors based on employment are really more important. And one way to look at it is through what's called the location quotient. This is a ratio of ratios. Oh, it doesn't say down at the bottom what it said on my slide. Okay, maybe it does on a later one. The first ratio is, here is my community, my county, maybe it's the multi-county or whatever the local area is. Okay, I've got a certain number of people in internet service providers, search portals, and data processing, okay, in my county. And they represent a share of the total employment in my county. Okay, so that's a fraction, a ratio. Okay, now over here I've got another ratio. Here's the same sector nationwide and how much that represents of the whole national employment base. There's another ratio. If I take this ratio and compare it to this ratio, I calculate a location quotient. And I put the word quotient on it so you won't question what I'm doing. Because quotient, no, that sounds like intelligence quotient. No, I can't mess with that. Okay, but all of this is a ratio of one fraction to another fraction. So now if my fraction here locally is the same as the national fraction, and that's all you mathematicians, that number is going to reduce down to 1.0. In effect, 1.0, economists would hate me for saying this, means you're getting your fair share. You're average. You're getting what the nation gets on the average of employment in that sector. So, if I come in here and so, oh, let me back up. So, if my fraction is bigger than the national fraction, then my location quotient is going to be bigger than 1. If my fraction is lower, it's going to be lower than 1. So it's a means of us assessing our local area and figuring out what do we have that, we're pretty much average. What are we lacking compared to the national averages? And what do we have more of than the national average, which are kind of specializations. So here in Missouri, the biggest specialization is in this ISP thing because they got a location quotient of almost 2. That upper fraction is twice as big as the United States fraction. This is for the whole state of Missouri. You got it? Now, I just went through a whole lot longer explanation of that than how simple it kind of really is. But it's a very useful and powerful tool for us to figure out what we're all about, and we can measure, and then it shows differences. Yeah, we got a lot of hospital workers, and that is a positive location quotient for Missouri, but on this measure, these up here are the more critical, none of them are more important than the others. It's just that they're the ones who tend to be more specialized here in Arkansas. So, in Missouri. So what does that mean as far as your understanding your community? I know what I got. I know what I don't got. Okay, I know where I'm average. Now, I always tell my wife, who's from Bogalusa, Louisiana. Anybody know where that is? Okay, well, I'm surprised that many know. Bogalusa, it's kind of there in the plain, in that little part of Louisiana that nobody pays, and Louisiana pays attention to, and it's more Mississippi than it is Louisiana. Okay? And so I met her after my first wife died. I met her in church, and I lived in Mississippi. She lived in Louisiana. Anybody ready to sing? Louisiana woman, Mississippi man? Her name's Mary Ann, and I was a professor. Okay, something to do with that. So, where's Gillian? Anyway, how did I get into that? Oh, I always tell her, Bogalusa is probably not going to have, and ever hope to have, a high location quotient in the snow ski industry. Because, first of all, they don't ever get any snow hardly down there. And second of all, the greatest slope that they have in the whole region is the ramp on the interstate. It's just as flat and low as a pancake down there. All right, so there's reasons why we have low location quotients. There's reasons why we have hybrids. Okay? So I've kind of that popular, it's probably a little too long, but I just want you to understand it's a really useful and powerful tool. It's just not as hard as the name makes it sound. And there is a spin-off from that. This is a snapshot in time. There is a spin-off from this that looks at how these numbers are changing over time, which is called shift share analysis. It looks at the same kinds of numbers, but now it's looking at how is this changing? Because some of these may be declining, these location quotients, and some may be increasing. That's another step further, but that's a very useful tool to look at trends. You've probably heard me use the word clusters. This represents companies in the same general industry category that are somehow interrelated to each other, and they're located nearby. Okay, they're geographically contiguous to each other, and they're functionally interrelated. So it's typically, it doesn't say this here, but it's typically got a core kind of business to it, and then a lot of linked activities that feed into it, either supply it or are marketed to from it. Okay, and all of the other kinds of activities that support that, business services and so forth, that support that. Okay, you make some region, every place has some kind of cluster. There's some rural county in Arkansas that we studied, and their cluster was all forestry, sawmills and loggers. Well, that was their cluster. Okay, everybody's got a cluster. Okay, you are more competitive in that cluster, and that's an important group of activities to know. It usually means the presence of a workforce that's geared to that type of business, which is it can be an asset, and it's certainly something we need to measure and know about. Now, as leaders, here's your role. Understand that these clusters exist. Okay, it's very important that we get a sense of that. Here they are. Here's what they are. They exist. And help make sure that that cluster, its needs are being met as best as you can. Make sure that they are continuing to be able to remain competitive so that those suppliers can continue to supply. That's the core business, and so that core business can continue to operate and not leave, because if the core business leaves, what happens to the suppliers? They're gone too. Okay? So we have to make sure we know who they are, and part of our strategy. And that kind of relates to what we call business retention and expansion, right? We need to know who those businesses are and work and do what we can with retaining them and then helping them to expand. And Mark will talk more about that tomorrow. So for the state of Missouri, here's the identified clusters that your state focuses most heavily on. Does that make sense to you, that they focus on those? Best you know the state, that's probably a pretty sensible group. It's not that they're ignoring all the other ones, it's just these are the ones they feel like they have some real advantages or there's some real opportunities and potentials for them to grow in the state.
I'm surprised about automotive being so. Is this in list of order?
No.
Oh, okay. That
No,
makes
there's not a
better sense.
priority there.
Okay,
I guess it's alphabetical.
that would make sense.
Okay, I'm going to show you something else here in a minute on that. This is this county, Howell County, right? Is that how you pronounce it? Howell? Not Howell? Howell, I was a... So here are the location quotients for this county. I know about the economy of this county a whole lot more just by looking at this table than I did when I drove into town. Okay? Again, remember a location quotient of 1 tells me that I've pretty much got my fair share of that business. More than 1, I'm specialized. Less than 1, I don't have as much. So here, this is for everybody. So 1, obviously 1 is total. Look at this 27. You got a lot of mining going on here? So the numbers are not lying, right? Why don't you have a lot of mining going on here? You don't have the minerals, the kinds of minerals that would make that a big industry, right? It's not like it's wrong. It's just that's part of what you're naturally endowed with. You got some really nice hills and beautiful countryside. It's just there's not that much minerals under it that we're mining right now.
But would forestry be in there? Or would forestry be in manufacturing? I guess it depends on what they're doing.
The forestry industry is within our region, it's just not within Howell County.
Say that again. Forestry what?
She wanted to know why
Yeah.
forestry wasn't listed as a prominent thing on there. And it's really the secondary manufacturing side of it is here with the flooring, and that wouldn't be called agribusiness. But the sawmills and everything else, which are in our surrounding counties, is. So in the region, when you pull up something from Merritt, it's going to show forest products as a huge, our largest cluster
For the region.
for the region.
And that would be under natural resources, unless they're doing a valued added, and then it'd be manufacturing.
Right.
Is that how they're
Correct.
defining it? Okay, that's what
And this isn't necessarily a comprehensive list of all sectors. These are just a selected group. But so the point 27, we know there's not a whole lot of mining going on here. Not as much construction as the national average. But what is this here? Manufacturing, 1.84. Does that make sense? Okay. Trade is close to 1, so that's pretty much near your average. Information sector, financial activities are all low, and then here is the other positive one, education and health services. Pretty high employment in that. Now, it's possible to go into each one of these and drill down into them, way down into the minutest detail where the data are available, and you can really get an idea of which actual types of businesses are driving each of those sectors. But again, it gives you a really good snapshot of time. Oh, here's the notes. You'll have this on your handout, location quotient. Now, if you can understand that, will you write me a note and explain that to me? It had to be an economist that wrote that right there. I just like the ratio of ratios and be done with it for the definition of location quotient. And then I have another hobby horse. This is an aside. There's no charge for this. I had to ride this hobby horse with my graduate students all the time. NC means not calculable. Well, see, there's an NC for unclassified. Not calculable. The data does not exist, or it is 0. What's wrong with that?
It's a difference
you
between
were-
not existing and being 0.
Huh?
There's a difference between not existing and being 0
That's
if you're
true,
talking
but
about a
what's wrong
ratio.
with the grammar in that sentence?
Oh,
Data are, a datum is.
oh,
Is what I always used to have to tell my students. So that's a hobby horse. It should read, the datum does not exist, or it is 0. People are using the word data interchangeably with the word information, and they're quite different terms. Okay. Again, I didn't charge you for that. Here's some trends that are going on nationally. I gotta speed this up a little bit, I guess. None of this should surprise us all that much, and I think you can see these trends highlighted even more over on this one. And remember, I said that location quotient has this component where you can look at how things are changing over time. That's called shift share analysis. That's what this does. So what stands out on that graph? This is national employment, okay?
I think what stands out to me is that the location quotient of 1.84, here locally is in the same industry that's dropping the fastest.
Well, that's brick.
That's kind of alarming.
Yeah. And this time frame, this goes back to 1970, and we need to update this because I think we can get at least 2015 data, but you see the trend. What's been the trend for manufacturing? What the shift share is saying is its growth is declining, and its rate of this pace of decline is increasing. Okay, it's declining, but it's declining at an increasing rate. Now, there's an economist right there. It means it's dropping like a brick. That help? What's doing better? Trade, transportation, and utilities is holding its own. Government appears to not have changed that much over this time
Health
period.
services.
Its rate of change.
Leisure and hospitality.
Financial services, leisure has kind of drifted up, but look at these big ones. Professional and business services and health services. They're the ones that are really increasing from just over 5 to about 7% on up to 15. In some cases, it's double. Its rate of growth is double. That means its actual growth is triple. So those are the trends. Those are the things that we need to know about what's going on nationally. And the way I like the way you put it. That helps us put in perspective what's happening to us locally. I know you can't read this, and I guess maybe one of my hot horses. There is a tool called cluster mapping, and it's an interactive database that you can make comparisons at the economic area or MSA or county level with it, and you can get all kinds of good information from it. It's just as far as understanding clusters, this isn't one of the pieces of information. If you're an economic developer, where do you want to work? Oh, this map, by the way, this map is showing prosperity. You can't read this very well, neither can I. Prosperity, and the darker the blue, the better. So where do you want to work? Which area, according to that map, do you want your job to be in? Huh?
The challenge.
Huh? I didn't know see here.
I guess Wyoming, which doesn't.
Yeah, what's that state right there? Wyoming. $65,000 income. You can't read this, but this is a product of the U.S. Department of Administration and Harvard Business School. Just leave that where it is. Cluster mapping, they have some really great information on this site, don't get me wrong. It's just that last slide wasn't one of them, but they can do all kinds of things to figure out your cluster and what it's made up of, and they can provide those kind of metrics. Very good tool. Here's another tool that the Census Bureau puts out on the map. Anybody use On the Map here? Familiar with it? It's a neat tool. Interactive. You go on the website, you can use this directly. I've got a lot of good stuff. This one is showing basically the labor force for, in this case, Howell County. And what that circular arrow is showing is there are 8,616 people who live in the county that work in the county. There's 5,648 that work outside the county but come to work, that live outside the county but work in the county. And there's another 4,700 that live in the county but go somewhere else. Now they're not, what is this, Oregon County? Is that what that says?
Be interesting.
Oregon? And what is this here?
Ozark.
Ozark. Okay, I'm not saying that they're all coming from Ozark to there. This is just kind of a schematic. Okay, they're coming from all around
Somewhere.
into the county and going from all around out of the county. Okay, that's a really handy tool to know. It helps you understand your labor force just with just those kind of simple numbers in terms of total numbers of labor. The same tool on the map helps you figure out where they're working. So where are they working mostly? West Plains, right? Is it this West Plains? What is this, Mountain View?
Mountain View,
And what town is this?
Little Springs.
Okay. So they have a mapping process that you can use to the extent you don't know, now you know, and then you can use that to illustrate it and share that in any way. As part of your strategic planning process, you can even share this information with potential businesses that want to locate here. If I was going to locate a business here and I needed a labor force, I might not put it there, for example. Unless there's something there that I can draw the labor force to me.
Does it
Some more
have
thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does it have the capability to show where those individuals are coming from, what county they're coming from?
Yeah, there is that kind of information of what counties they're coming in. Right, Mark?
In fact, I think if you go back a slide or two, I think it's showing a far right, if you were to be on that page, below that blue text, from there down, I think it does lay out the counties or the geographies, however it's defined.
Yeah, this doesn't say it, but he's saying you can click on some of that and get that information. Where would you suspect, just for this county, that most of those people from outside are coming from to work in here?
Down 63 Highway, or maybe up 63 Highway, from like Texas County, and yeah, pretty much Texas County. I'd say Kabul.
Some of them could be coming from Arkansas, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot are coming from Arkansas.
Okay. Some other things you should know about, we need to understand what our physical conditions we have toward business in our area. Are they positive? What are the conditions of buildings, vacancy rates, the business climate, the knowledge, what knowledge-based resources are here? What kind of educational resources do we have here? I say here, I mean in your area. We need to know that, be able to list that out so we know what we got. And we need to know how we compare to others. Quality of life. Quality of place is on here. Community vision. Let's get into the process a little bit more. That helps stimulate things in like the Railroad Depot. They revitalized that. And now it's sort of a historical draw for tourism. So it's, what do we got? And then we got to kind of get creative on what can we do with it. That's where the thinking hats have to come on and really create. I'm kind of more of a logical person and so forth, but the creative people kick in, and that's what they bring to bear to the process. And then there are threats. These are future events or things that are going on now, and it look like they're going to go on in the future, that can lead to negative impacts. Often they're beyond our control. Threats typically come in on us a lot of times from outside. There is not a whole lot we can do here locally about what's going to happen in the fluctuation of the national economy. For example, we just, it's a threat. We've seen that as the economy's gone up and down over the years. We've seen how that threat can affect things locally. Another kind of threat like that is technologic advances that make what we do obsolete. Whoever was making the 5 1/4 inch floppy disks back in the 90s, where are they today? We can't even read 5 1/4 inch, and they were really floppy. Anybody remember? They were actually truly floppy disks. Now we don't even know what floppy disks are. We don't even know what 3 1/2 inch ones are, because we're using jump drives and all that. The cloud. So technologic trend, and that can happen quickly.